everyone, welcome back to episode 4 of the Carlton Wrap. This will be the last episode before the Christmas break, but I'm lucky enough to be joined by a familiar face now on Blue Abroad. Her name's Kirra. Welcome to the show. Give me a little bit of an introduction about yourself and your journey as a Carlton supporter.
Thank you so much for having me. So I have been a bagger since I was born. My mum was Carlton. My dad was Collingwood, so I'm lucky that I chose the Carlton path and I went down barracking for Carlton. Obviously, it's been a lot of sad years, but I love Carlton Football Club. I go every weekend. It's now my nan and I's thing. We go every weekend together. We go to a few interstate games. I just love Carlton. I love the community, especially now with all of the social media channels, podcasts, YouTube channels, Instagram accounts. I feel like the Carlton community have really come together and it's actually awesome. I just love it.
Well, in terms of your perspective on the club as you've grown up, what are your favourite memories, not so favourite memories, sort of like how you've become connected within the community?
Yeah, so look, I'll be honest, I don't really remember much before the age of 5. And then I didn't go to the 2013 final. So that breaks my heart a lot because with all the pain that we've gone through, I've missed probably the most successful game we've had. So I missed the 2013 final, but a memory that will always stick out is the Port game. I don't even know what year it was. It may have been 2016. And I think we just won 5 games in a row. I loved that game. And then there was a function afterwards and we went to the function and I was like, I don't know how old I would have been then, but I was little. So I was like crawling between everyone's legs trying to get to the players. And that was a really good day. That was when I was like, we're going places. We're going to be good. Still waiting. Another game would have been the St Kilda Carlton game in 2019. That was a dead robber. Like there was none of the teams were going anywhere, but that was just amazing. That atmosphere. One of my Collingwood friends was watching it on the TV and she sent me a message and she's like, it looks like a final. It looks amazing. I'm like, I know, what is this? But that they will probably be like standouts for my favourite games. But then the lowlights, I get really attached to coaches and it's not a good thing because I sometimes put on coloured glasses and can't see how bad they really are. And I cried so much when we sacked Bolton because I was like, it's fine, let's just give him some time. I literally cried in the press conference. And then 2 weeks later, I was like, oh my gosh, why was I crying? And then I was heartbroken when we sacked Teague because I was like, he will take us places. 2 weeks later, I was like, what was I looking at? So probably the lowlights are all the coaches that we've sacked over the years because I get really attached to them, which is really bad. But hopefully it's up with Boss.
Well, you can only hope so. Seems like it's getting better, but in terms of coaches, I'm a bit of the opposite. I've seen too many sports to know now like when a coach is like decent, and I can't get attached anymore. You either know it's there or you know it's not.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess you'll say with Boss, I reckon it will be very obvious straight away come round 1 if there's a change. I think
100%. I think round 1, I think the players should be scared for round 1 because I think that will tell a lot. That will also the fact that we had the opener taken off us. I hope that they're scared. Like if they don't win, or at least play a very, very decent game, then they'll be in a lot of strife.
Or hell will break loose if they don't win. Yeah.
We've waited long enough. I think this is our time.
It is. In terms of, obviously, I mentioned earlier, you've had a bit of a cameo on Blue Abroad recently. Just talking about like your connection with that Blue Abroad channel, how you came about on there. Yeah,
so I was following Blue Abroad for a while. I would watch their fan cams. I loved it, but I was way too scared to go on fan cams. I was like, there is no way I am ever going on fan cams. And then 2020, so last year, we're on our way home from the footy. It must have been, maybe it wasn't. I don't know when it was. We were on our way home from the footy and I had 2 friends with me in the car and they were giving me the confidence to go on. I'm like, all right, we'll just go on in the car with my friends. Went on and it wasn't scary. Terry was so lovely. He was really good at he's keeps the conversation going if you run out of things to say. And then from then I just kept going on each week, and it got less scary each week. And then I just started, messaging Terry back and forth, and he's been awesome. He is so good at nourishing all us young, up and coming, want to be media personnels. I think he's really nourishing the young Carlton fans, and he's just been awesome. So he's helping us all out here and there where he can, and so I love Bull Broad and the community and everything about it.
Well, speaking of, talk about what you want to do in the future, sort of what you're aspiring to do in the upcoming years.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to do a Bachelor of Media and Communications next year. I want to go into news, sports, presenting. Originally, still kind of, Jackie Felgate was the aim to do the news and then the sport segment of the news. But lately, I think I'm going more down the sport path, Sarah Jones and all of those kind of people on game day when they're at the game and they're presenting and things like that. So I think I'll keep both options open, but I think at the moment I'm leaning a bit more down this full sport path. But yeah, fingers crossed that all goes to plan.
Well, it should. We keep on this track. It's looking positive at this point, so you can only hope for the best. So now on to the club so looking at the sort of main topics of the week, and hasn't been a lot to talk about. Obviously, news has been a bit dry of late. It's all pre-season, draft is gone, and I think now we're sort of just waiting for the AFLW to start in about a month. Men's is, just all pre-season, but the one sort of talking point of this week was the team camp. Obviously, I think they partnered with Anaconda, so that was obviously some sponsor deal. I don't know where they went.
I think
where they went.
Somewhere near the Grampians.
It looked
something like that.
Looks something like that, but nothing on exactly where they went. But they were there for a couple of days. Just wanted to bring up a couple quotes Charlie Curnow has said, and then we'll have a discussion about sort of what that means for that team. So he said, it's less about football and more talking around the campfire, getting to know each other. And another one, we've been together for a while now, this group, so it's probably going to help us even further with bonding more. Adding new players to the group and getting them involved, as well as a new coaching staff, has been good. So firstly, do you believe this? Because I look at this and think anyone can say this. Any player in any sporting code could go out on a camp and say this. So do you believe what he's saying, first of all?
It's interesting because I want to believe it, and off the bat, I believe it. But you can walk the walk, but at the end of the day, you can talk the talk, but at the end of the day, you've got to walk the walk. So I believe it because I have way too much faith in this footy club, and I'll believe anything they tell me. But at the same time, I know how much they've hurt all of us in the past, and until they actually go out onto the footy field and prove that this camp has helped them, then I don't think it's anything other than words in an interview to make us feel good until round one.
Well, I mean, in terms of actually bonding together with a group, in terms of words that are said between players and ways to bond, I mean, obviously we're at an age where we've grown up with social media our whole lives. We've been influenced by a lot of things around us. So in terms of these players coming together, do they have this different connection to a lot of other teams that have a lot more experienced players that aren't in that generational gap where they've been influenced so much? Is there a different bond or connection that is not seen anywhere else?
It's interesting because I don't know if how much age influences a footy club, and I think obviously I've never been on the inside of a footy club, so I don't know really. I'll always remember when Mark Murphy had an interview after a game and he said, these boys keep me young, they keep me young and they keep me rejuvenated. And I think that's something really exciting about a young group, is that they've all got a lot of excitement within them, and they know that they've still got quite a while left of footy. But then on the flip side of that, they know that they're not retiring in 2 years. So do they have that motivation to have success now, or do they think they still have a few more years? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think in terms of the social media and things of that nature, I don't know whether it would be a positive or negative impact, because they would see so much of the negativity, and every article's written about Carlton because why not? So, it's an interesting one. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, I think of it this way, that this is a better opportunity for a leadership camp more than anything. I don't think this was necessarily to do with bonding as much, because they're at the footy club every day of the week pretty much. So you've got quite a lot of time for that. I think, if anything, because I honestly don't really believe what Kerno said as much, because of course any single player would have said that, and I'm sure it did happen, but of course there would have been a lot more that went on. So I'm hoping what came out of it was a bit of a leadership experience for a lot of the young guys, because, as obviously been talking about, that you lose your older blokes in Murphy, Casbolt, you lose that experience, that leadership. I think that I'd rather them come out with better leadership skills than team bonding, because they're professionals. They know how to bond with each other. They don't really need a camp at the end of the day. I guess it's one of those things, if they win a premiership, they look back on, and it's like one of those documentary things where they say, yeah, we went a camp and that's the one that changed it. But I'm just interested to what they really did on that camp, because obviously they're going to be really selective with what they're talking about. But give your thoughts.
It's interesting because I was actually thinking that the camp looked very different to our previous camps. Normally, we're up at Gold Coast, we're in a hotel, they're going surfing.
Yeah.
This was like they were in tents and going for 30-kilometre hikes. So I think it did look like a different camp. Like everything in the last month has looked different, and we're getting excited about this different look. But at the end of the day, if the footy doesn't look different, then it doesn't matter if the camp looked different. But I think about the bonding, other than the new guys, they were in a hub for nearly 2 years. So the bonding should be there. Like they should have a good connection with each other. But maybe the leadership has created the bonding, because at the end of the day, you've got to have strong relationships with the guys to be able to say, that's not good enough. No, do this, do that. But still be able to, have a good relationship, but also hold each other accountable. So hopefully the leadership and the bonding go hand in hand, and it really oomphs the group and emphasises what we want to be about next year.
Yeah, I'm just very keen to see if this was a really big turning point, because like I said, like you see all those documentaries for every team, it's like, oh, we had this camp, we had this, and that made the difference. So I'm a bit interested to see if this did anything at all. At the end of the day, I think you can forget about these sort of things. I think as a player, you are getting paid at the end of the day for what you're doing on the ground.
Yeah.
And I think about it this way. It's like, in general in life, you're doing something. Example, when we're at school, you get told all these things before a test to remember, all these things to do. But when you're in that moment, it all goes out the window. Yeah. You don't think about what Voss told you at camp. You don't think about that bond you created at camp. You are just doing your job. So that's where I get like a bit worried about the actual overall outcome of it.
Yeah, I've never thought of it like that. That's a really cool way to think about it, because I've never ever thought of it that way, and it's so true, because when they're on their footy ground, they're not thinking about what Voss told them on day one.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. And it's also interesting you mentioned about the documentaries, because I was listening to Dylan Friends, and they were saying that the Melbourne, they reckon their year started with a surfing trip they took at the start of the year. And
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always fun.
They were like, it was the surfing trip at the start of the year. We all sat down, we held each other accountable. We were saying what we didn't like about, each other in terms of football, their football self, not them as a person. And they're like, that's where it started. That kicked us off for the year. Is the camp going to kick us off for the year?
See, look, if they don't win a premiership, this camp means nothing, and that would have been the same with Melbourne. If they had won nothing, then that camp would have meant nothing to them. So whether that actually meant, I'm sure it did, but unless you actually went in, it never is going to get mentioned.
Yeah.
I'm hoping so. On to the sort of next thing, and this is, back to this culture change, a younger team, a younger generation. In terms of, in your perspective, what do you see as the next step in moving forward with young talent and leadership, building that culture that is sustainable, because in the, obviously past years we've brought in players from the draft, all these, Wiedering, Mackay's, that have been brought into teams that have had no accountability in terms of leadership. So now with a young team that is pretty much all the same wavelength, they all understand each other, what is the next step in remaining sustainable for a long period of time rather than just the short term?
I think there's two main points. One is consistency. I think our consistency is just not there. And I think that's something we really need to work on, because like we'll go to round 1 and we're like, yes. Then we go to round 2. What is this? It's a completely different team to we saw round 1. They just are so inconsistent at the moment. And the excuse has always been that we're young and that we can't run out a whole season and that we can't run out a whole game. And, we're seedlings growing. But I think consistency is a massive thing. They need to be able to switch on for the whole game and the whole season, because they're the best teams are the ones that can do it the longest. It's survival of the fittest. It's a long season. 23 rounds plus finals is a long time. So you've got to, and it's hard because you've got to start on the first 5 rounds are very important because they set you up for the year, but then you can't burn yourself out at the start of the year because then you're stuck for the end of the year. So it's all about consistency and pacing yourself. I think that's one thing that we really need to work on, and I'm really hoping Voss is able to get out of them. And the other thing is leadership. I think our leadership has just been so choppy and changey. We change captains every few years. Our leadership group changes. I think personally there's been a lot of talk around, do we keep Cripper and Doc captains? Personally, I think yes. I think unless they go up to Voss and say, I just want to focus on footy, give the captaincy to someone else, which it could happen. But if they aren't the ones to say, I don't want to be captain next year, then I think we need to stick by them. I think we need to keep them as captains because, back to my old point, consistency. I think we just need a bit more consistency. And I think Cripper and Doc do complement each other really well and they can be really good captains together. So I think unless they're the ones to say, I don't want to be captain anymore, then we've got to keep them. I think one more other thing is that some young blood in the leadership group. I know Stock has said that leadership isn't really on his mind at the moment, but I think people like Stock, boys like Stock, need to be in the leadership group because we need some young blood to be able to bring us up so that when the next round of oldies retire, then we have them already building the same values and cores, and it's just an evolving door and not stop, start. So I think consistency and leadership is key.
Well, I mean, I saw what was interesting with the AFLW. They had, I think, one captain and 2 co-hosts, if I remember, or at least I know there were 3.
Yeah.
So it's interesting if the men's side will adopt the same tactic, that's where that sort of youthful player comes into mind. I don't think they'll do it because I think it's just a bit hectic, especially if, you can't, I don't think it's the best to throw it onto a young guy who at his stage is probably only just going to be focusing on getting his job done. But I do like the idea about soccer, but I honestly think, and this is in all team sport, I don't like the idea of the responsibility falling on a captain when times get tough. And I mean, maybe that's just a junior sport thing I've seen where it gets thrown at you, and if they're not doing something, well, everyone. I don't think that is exactly the same in senior sport, in professional sport. But I think, like I said with the camp, you need to train every single player to be accountable rather than focusing on Cripps, who is on the ball all the time. He cannot see what's around him half the time. So you got to hope Doherty comes back. I think if Doc isn't playing a lot of football, you pass it to Wiedering, because I do like the idea of another defender. You never give it to a forward, honestly. I don't see the point in that because they only care about kicking goals rather than they want the ball delivered to them.
Line would take that on anyway, so
I could not see anyone in there. But yeah, I think that's the best way to move forward and actually remain accountable across the board rather than just on Cripps, on Doherty. Because I think that's been their problem, especially last year. I noticed those Gold Coast, those North games, even like the Sydney game example where they could have easily won that if they wanted to. And I do remember they were only down by 11 and they gave up in that last quarter.
100%. Red time kills us. Red time kills us so badly. As soon as it ticks over, we just disappear, and I don't know where we go, and it's really, really bad because the opposition kicks like 3 goals in 3 minutes, and then it's so hard to get back from that. But I agree with the whole don't put so much pressure on the captain. I always think of the Brisbane game, the first game with Teague, and we were not winning that game until Cripps came out of nowhere and absolutely destroyed it, and which is amazing. You need your captain to be able to stand up and do that for you. But then at the same time, I think, what if he was injured that day? How much would we have lost by if he was not there? I think the boys' leadership isn't just about the title. It's about, everyone pitching in. And I think a footy club is so important that all of your players are leaders, because at the end of the day, you are. So, yeah, I agree.
Well, I mean, with that red time goal, I think there's no problem conceding red time, because in sport, at the end of the day, your opposition will score goals against you. It's just inevitable that you're going to get scored against. The problem was just not changing anything up to stop it happening again. If it happens one quarter, you live with it, you move on. But to let it happen again is their problem. So maybe that was a coaching problem. I think there were some dumb footballers in the team at times, but also some dumb coaches at the time. So you put 2 and 2 together, and it was never really going to work out amazingly. So that's where you look towards Voss and his tacticians to move that around, because leadership can't, at the end of the day, fix a team going on a good run. If you're getting scored against in a really decent way, it's all right. But if you're just conceding because you're playing terrible, then that's worse.
Yeah. I'd love to get your opinion. Do you reckon red time goals and how we just disappear in red time is mental or fitness?
That's interesting. Be hard to say. I think it's more mental, because they expect, especially when they're up by a bit, they think it's going to come to them when they know they've never had that luxury of having the game on a plate for them. I think it's one goal they can handle, but when the second one comes, they collapse. Because, if I was a player, I'd be thinking, how much time's left? Will the siren go? And that's all you want to get to, and you let everything else happen. And by that point, when 1 or 2 goals come through, you've got the one runner coming out telling you what to do with limited time, and it would fall. I could see how that can fall apart really quickly, especially in those tight games. And what do you think? What's your opinion?
No, I agree. I think it definitely has to be mental. At the end of the day, they're AFL professional athletes. They're getting paid to be fit. It's their job to be able to run out a game. So I think it's definitely mental, and I think it's also on the flip side, other teams just have this mental edge over us that they know we're Carlton, and if they grind for long enough, then we'll crack and they'll be able to, win the game over. So I think we just need to change that way other teams perceive us, and that will change the whole mind game of the actual game. And I think that starts round 1. That starts in the first minute of round 1, and we've got to show the rest of the AFL that we are here and we're not going to be rolled over and stood all over this year, and that this is our time to flip a new page of the Carlton history and make our supporters happy.
It's frustrating. How many times we heard those comments each year?
I say the same thing every year, and I believe it, and I'll continue to believe it until it happens. But
I'm just so pessimistic now with the club. I can't see beyond a loss anymore. That's all I see. I think a win is a luxury if it ever happens.
I agree. I go into every game thinking we're going to lose, because if I go in thinking we're going to win, I'll just be heartbroken every week. So I go in thinking we'll lose, because if we lose, it's fine, and if we win, then it's amazing. But I still every year, this year's going to be different. It's going to change. We're going to be in finals. We're going to make a push for it. So let's just hope this time it actually comes true.
It's just all get down to a good start. Like, you rarely see teams in a lot of sport that start really well and drop off, besides teams who have quite easy draws to start the season. But it's, there's pretty good correlation. And you see, there's that stat that teams who are outside the top 8 after, I think it's like round 2 or 0-2, it's like 9 or 10 of them have ever made finals since. So it's all down to that. I think they just need to be 1-1.
Yeah.
By the time round 2 ends, you can cop a loss to I reckon a loss to Richmond is okay as long as you back it up the next week, because that's what they've never been able to do.
I want them to win against Richmond.
I want them to win against Richmond as well, but I think that's the problem. They never win in round 2, which never helps their case either. Yeah. That goes back to the mentality where they know that they've got no hope. But I can live with it as long as they back it up. Yeah.
I just think because everyone knows that Carlton lose to Richmond round 1. So I just think if we can win round 1, that'll automatically change the way people think. It'll build the belief within the boys, and then hopefully they can back it up round 2, because we need 2 wins would be amazing. We'll all think we're winning the flag. The Kool-Aid will be going everywhere. They'll be the most loved boys in Australia. So I think it would be awesome, because the other thing is, if we do make finals, we don't want to be relying on other teams' results. We don't want to be sitting there around 23 watching all of the games being like, you've got to win, you've got to lose, you've got to win. So we want them to make it in their own right and have no other team affect whether they're in finals or not. So we really need to start the year well.
Well, in terms of finals, I don't want them to finish. If they're in there, they need to be in there, not Essendon sitting 8th when they get in. I hate that, because, like you said, it usually 7th and 8th each year they're just finals cloggers and they go out and they're not needed. I don't want to be that, because I don't think that helps anything to just go out in the first round, unless it's a really close season. But usually, going off past years, it's never been any good. Really, the only thing I can remember in terms of teams finishing that low is probably Collingwood 2 years ago against West Coast, and you saw the next week they got pumped. So it is interesting, but I think, like you said, I don't want them to rely on other teams. I mean, at the end of the day, I would take it. Anyone would take it.
I'll take anything, but if we had our choice, we wouldn't be relying on other teams to make us finals.
Well, on to our sort of second last segment. I thought it would be a good idea to just review the first 10 players on the list. Well, not first 10 players, first 10 numbers on the list, so 1 to 10. I just thought we'd give a little quick rundown. I want to give your expectation, your big call on this player, and sort of a target for them to hit in 2022. So obviously, number 1, Jack Silvagni.
I love Jack. How can you not love Jack? I'm the biggest Jack supporter. I think we just needed to give him time, and I think we saw in 2020 and 2021 that apart from his injuries, he was really coming into his shell. My big call is that he won't play in the forward line. He'll be a tagger. I think. I just think of the games when he tagged players, especially I think when he tagged Nat Fife. He was good at it. He was really good at it. He can go up forward when we need him, but I think he can go up the field a little bit more in 2022. So that's my big call for Jack. And what was the other one? Was there another?
Just a target for him to hit in the season.
I reckon his goal kicking, if he does stay in the forward line, he needs to work on that a little bit more. His accuracy isn't amazing, but just the basic ones out the front of goal, you need to be able to get them straight through the big sticks, Jack. Straight through the big sticks.
If you had to set a goal target for him by the end of 2022, what would you give him?
I'd say your goal to be not in the forward line and to be in the mid, helping us win games, chasing the best player in the opposition team.
Yeah, I mean, I think for him, I'm actually not sure what to expect with because he's become very versatile, and like you said, with his goal kicking, that can get you down after a while, and whether he's keen on a positional change. I think he still will stick to where he is. I think he's been good as that half forward that pushes up the ground and creates a contest in the air most of the time. He has become a very physical, demanding player. One of those, grunted, really good, like Stocker, those blokes that will put their head over the ball. If I had to set a goal for him, I'd say I think he does need to go on the scoreboard more, because you can't rely and I'm not very optimistic with Curnow that he will get through 22 games. I think now with that many injuries, the amount of blokes across the whole AFL that have big injuries and play for a long time afterwards, it's not very high.
Mm.
I think 20 goals for him. I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah.
Someone that will hit the scoreboard once a game,
mm-hmm.
once or twice a game, make a bit of an impact. Number 2, Paddy Dow.
Paddy Dow's interesting. I want him to just continue what he did this year. I think he was building something really special. I think that game where he hurt his eye or something like that, that game was going to be good. I think he's coming into his shell. I think everyone needs to give him some time. I think everyone thought he was going to be a lot better than he is at the moment, but I think he will build, and I think as long as he can get consistency in his game. Obviously, he's not going to have an amazing game every week, but he just needs to build a little bit more, 1% each week. And then, I think he's a very big confidence player, and I think when his confidence gets knocked a little bit, he struggles. So I think as long as he keeps building, then he'll be okay, and just aim to play in the ones every week of 2022.
I think with Paddy, if you don't get anything out of him in the first half of the season, you set up a trade at the end of the year. I'm sort of sick of, this is just because of the patience in now. We want, especially when you've talked up these players for a long time, you either perform or you go. I don't want him to sit in the reserves either. You find someone that will. The problem as well with a trade is that he's not going to give you a lot.
No.
That's the problem. And I thought, sort of, let's link this in. I'm going to skip number 3 because that is Motlop, but we don't know enough right now to have a chat. So, Lockie O'Brien, very similar. I have the exact same thoughts with him, and I think Lockie O'Brien should have got the flick this year. I don't think he offers anything to this team we don't have already.
I do sometimes feel bad because I feel like sometimes I just take all my anger out on Lockie O'Brien, because he just really irks me sometimes, because sometimes I just see him running. I'm like, where are you going? Like, what are you doing? I think even if you've got no idea what you're doing, go to the ball, run to the ball and just try and give something. I think I have the exact same thoughts on O'Brien. I think he really needs to show something this year, and I think this is his make or break year, because if he doesn't, we can't wait around for you. We're giving you enough opportunities. This is your year to either say, yes, I'm here and I'm going to give you something, going to add something to this team, or thank you, next.
Well, the only thing with him is all that the media talk about, all the supporters, is his left foot. But if that is all you have to base off a guy and his talent, is you really shouldn't have him in the team at all. I think I did watch him at a VFL game this year, and I don't know. I just don't think he's at AFL standard, or I think he's been brought in. He got brought in at the wrong time, where he was integrated into a team that really was never going to help him develop well. So I think it's the same as Dow. You either perform or you get the flick. But the only thing I see with those two is I don't even see them getting a spot in the 22 as it is.
Yeah.
So the only good thing about that is they really would they have to actually, to get into it. They really have to prove themselves. I think this year, not last year, this year was much easier because they were losing and they didn't need to actually put out their best 22 each week. It wouldn't have mattered. But I think this year, I hope they stay fit, the whole team, because I want these two to earn it rather than giving them experience. I know you need experience, but I don't think it's VFL is. It's not the same, but
you've got to earn it.
Yeah.
100%. I'm the biggest believer of if you are not knocking the door down for weeks, like not just one good game. You've got to be having a few good weeks in a row in the VFL if you're not already in the team, because, you know, at the end of the day, we're here to win, and to win, we've got to put out our best 22. And if you're not in it, then you've got to stay in the VFL. There is no other way to go about it. If you're not absolutely knocking that door down, then, you know, you don't have any other option. And the other thing that excites me is that if they are, then that also motivates the best 22 to keep working, because someone's waiting there to take your spot. So we really need them to, you know, really grind out in the VFL to challenge for the best 22, because then there's healthy competition. That's what we need.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm just hoping. I hope something that Voss has told them changes something, because they haven't really been talked a lot about, and haven't even seen a lot of photos of them, or they've been a bit on the down low. So maybe something's happening, something different. I'm not too sure. Number 5. This is Chera's number, because I'm looking at the old list and it's still got SPS, but this is Chera's number now. Am I right? Yes.
Yeah.
The sky's the limit for this kid. He's going to absolutely have a massive year, I think.
Same. I think Chera, Cripps, Walsh, that midfield really excites me. I think Chera can really add something good to the team. And I think, you know, not that Freo have been amazing, but I think also having someone with a different mindset, he would have different work habits, different, you know, he's just gone about his footy differently because he's from a different footy club. So I think he can really add to our midfield, and fingers crossed he really, really, really shows up, because I think I get worried because there is expectation on him, but at the end of the day, you know, we traded you, so you've got to have expectation on you.
Well, I think as well as his inside work, I sort of watching a bit of Freo during the year. He's also a bit nifty in the forward line, where he'll sit back of the contest on the, you know, half forward line and roam, which I think we haven't had a lot of those players that at least can do it very well. The only one I can think that does it pretty good is Zach Fisher. That will always be there, but I think Chera adds this. I think he's very smart football-wise, which not a lot of players are smart football-wise. They're just good
footballers.
So it's a bit different.
Well, sometimes they're smart, they're not good.
Yeah, so that's why I'm hoping. That's Lockie O'Brien in my opinion. He's smart, but his quality is out a little bit off the mark. Yeah. 6, Zach Williams. Obviously, the year it didn't pan out. I think he got the criticism only because of what we paid him in the end. I think he was poor, but a lot of people expected you'd get the GWS Zach Williams, which was a way better team than what we had. And he came from a grand final team at the end of the day. So I get in coaching didn't help, but I think he didn't do as bad as people say he did. He wasn't great. He definitely fell away, but I think he'll be better this year.
I 100% agree with you. I think he copped it really, really harshly, and I think sometimes he was criticised unfairly, because at the end of the day, we weren't a finals team. He played that amazing game that we were, you know, basing him off and paying him off in finals. You know, that's a completely different ballpark. No one really plays how they play in finals in the normal season. So I think he'll want to prove people wrong. He will want to come out in 2022 and say, no, I am the Zach Williams that you paid for. I am the Zach Williams you all thought I was. But I think we also have to remember he was also at a new club. He's, you know, learning new ropes. We also didn't have a very good year. He's just come to a club that is sacking their coach. You know, I think 2022 he'll be much better, but I definitely agree that he was harshly criticised.
On to number 7, Matt Kennedy. He did get a bit of game time at the end of the season. I've always liked his game for a long time, and I always got a bit annoyed that he never got the game time. I think he's one of those football smart players again and I remember at the end of 2019, he got stuck up in the forward line, and he'd always give you something which a lot of other players never did throughout last year, which really frustrated me. And then he got put in and he made a big impact. So I think starting 22, he goes in there without a doubt.
I'm a huge, huge fan of Bam Bam. I think Matt Kennedy is awesome. I think I don't know why we weren't playing him. I don't know if something was happening behind the scenes that we didn't know about, because I really, every time I opened the teams on a Thursday night or a Wednesday night and that he wasn't there, I was so confused, because he, in my opinion, was in our best 22 at that time. So I really, really hope he gets some more game time, of course, if he earns it in 2022, because I really like what he adds to our team.
Yeah, no more to say about that. That's, I think Teague did have a bit to do with it. He could have been injured, and no one said anything about it. Which, I mean, that's a whole nother sin in terms of the club and their injury communication. That was a bit dodgy at times. But yeah, he should have a big impact. I hope he doesn't get dropped, or I think he has a bigger role than people expect. You don't always need someone who's going to win you the ball, someone who's going to just make plays and create opportunities. Number 8, Lockie Fogarty. He had a pretty good start to the season. He dropped off at the end, which isn't a big concern. It's not like we needed him to, like, obviously was never looking great finals-wise. So he was prolific at the start, and I think in terms of losing bets, not that he's that Eddie Betts type, but those small, like inside, those small forwards that can push up into the midfield, create a really hard contest. I remember, I think it was against Geelong, like one of the first players, he goes up, and just pretty. It was cool to see such a little guy just put their body on the line. What are your thoughts in terms of an expectation for him?
I love Fogarty. I really, really liked him. I was really, really surprised at what he gave to our team. And I think, with him dropping away, I think we have to remember that he was never in like the best 22 every week at Geelong. So he hasn't had that experience of playing a whole season out. He probably hasn't even played half a season out. So he probably just didn't have that, that fitness to keep him going every week. But I think if he can play a whole season this next year, he'll be great for us, because what he provides, his pressure, he just goes after it, never stops. I think he can add something, like you said, without bets. I think he can really solidify his best 22 if he can stay fit and stay informed for a season.
I think I was surprised he actually got into the first 22 to start off with. I thought he was someone you'd be waiting on, but maybe I just didn't. I don't think I saw enough of him at Geelong to really realise. I don't think no one did. He played quite a few games, but I never really remember him. Yeah. But he did make an impact. So, yeah, one of those blokes that you probably could put straight in. I don't see, I couldn't see anyone coming in for him. Sorry. So, yeah, pretty easy. Last two, obviously, Cripps and Mackay. I'll start with Cripps. There's a lot to talk about. Let's just keep it as concise as possible.
Yeah. I think Cripple.
Yeah.
I don't want to say he'll be back, because that's not fair. Who knows if he'll ever get back to the 2019 Cripper, but I just want him to get to the best version of Patrick Cripps he can be in 2022. And I think Voss will really help him out. I think as supporters, I know we want him to be the 2019 Patrick Cripps, but maybe he'll never be that. Maybe he will never be able to go back to that player he was and the player we all thought he was going to be. But I think he can bounce back. He's not going to want to have a 2021 season. But in saying that, I actually don't think he was as poor as people made out in 2021. I think because we were comparing him to 2019 and how good he was in that year, and when everyone thought he was going to win the Brownlow, and I think because we're comparing him to his highest standard and not just your average footy player, he gets criticised a lot more than maybe other players do. But I think he definitely needs to bounce back. He needs to go back to his best, whatever his best looks like in 2022.
Well, I think with Cripps, it's like there will be no 2019 repeat. It's never going to happen again, which I think it's not fair to give him that expectation, because 2019 was yet again like an average team. So that's with any team. You got like LeBron, he carries teams. It doesn't mean you've got a good team around you. Just he carries a team that was not so good around him. I like this year that he changed up his game in terms of not focusing so much on each individual statistic. It was him making an impact for other players. And I like that. I can't remember what game it was, but he racked up about 23 touches that 19 of them were handballs. And I thought, that's all you need to do.
He needs
doesn't just play your role. Yeah.
I agree. I think he needs to get rid of kicking. And it sounds weird, but I think if you can have very minimal kicks in a game and you can just handball, I think that's his game. I think that was when he was playing his best footy. So I agree 100%. Yeah.
Well, it'd be nice to just have him as someone you can throw up forward as well. Mm-hmm. That will just, you got Harry off, throw Cripps up, and you've got someone who will just do his own work because he is big at the end of the day. So you don't need him in the midfield, especially when you have Kirra in now. I think that has made can't think of the words. It's created that pathway for Cripps to have that role on the forward line. On to our last one, Harry Mackay. I've got literally nothing to say. Just do the same as he did. He can't, what else is, he'll improve, but that's scary to think that he can improve.
The only thing I will say, I don't have much to say about Harry, just do whatever you did in 2021 because that was amazing. But I did notice at the end of the year, I don't know whether it was because of the injuries he was starting to get, but he stopped leading. He was very standstill. He was waiting for the ball to come to him, which wasn't what was making him so good. I think he's run, and he was working with the speed project again this off season. So hopefully he's not planning on changing that, but his run to the ball and his lead was what was making him so good because his other opponents couldn't run with him, and then they just weren't good enough for him. So I think he needs to keep that lead up because I definitely noticed at the end of the 2021 season that he was just standing kind of still waiting for the ball to come to him. So that's the only thing I'd say, but just do whatever you did in 2021, H, please, because that was amazing.
That's all. You can't really say any more about Harry because he plays his role and he has completely transformed himself. And it's weird, I don't really remember his first couple of years. I just remember 2020 onwards, which is very odd.
No, me too. I don't know why. Maybe it was because Charlie Curnow.
Yeah, probably Charlie that.
But yeah,
took the spotlight off him. But that's our player review, numbers 1 to 10. Just to finish off the show, a quick AFLW expectation where we finish and finals, what the goal is, and same with AFL, your expectation, the finish, and just your overall achievement for both teams.
Yeah, cool. So AFLW, they need to make finals, and the season is so short, so they need to win early because if you don't win early, there's no way you're making finals, and that's what our problem was this year. I think, grand final would be amazing, but if that happens, who knows? AFL finals, we need to make finals, and if we don't, it has to be a really tight season, and it has to be because every team is pushing for finals. Because if we're ninth, we need to make finals. So if we don't make finals, I'll be really, really disappointed. So just finals for both teams is what I would love.
And lastly, I've asked this to Terry and Ari so far, a big call for 2022.
Can we make a grand final? Can we do something?
I really wish.
Can we make a grand final? I'm just going to go for it. Voss is going to take us to the grand final in 2022.
Well, I think that's the biggest call you can possibly make.
Drink the Kool-Aid.
Look, if I'd have to give a big call similar, I'd probably say a semi-final. I think that would probably be realistic because, and it's funny looking back even at that 2011 team, they made a semi and they should have made a prelim, but I don't want to go into that. That game still haunts me, but that team was if they versed this current team on paper, I think it would be extremely close.
No,
but I think the competition wasn't as good as it was now.
No, I agree. I think
interesting.
I like your big call. Please, Carlton. Please.
I hope so. Well, that concludes today's episode. Thank you, Kirra, for joining me. This will be the last one until the new year. An exciting New Year episode with Helena. We'll be previewing the AFLW season in depth. giving and run through of what's to come. Kirra, I'm sure you'll be joining me later on in the season again. So thank you for joining me. Happy holidays to everyone, and go the Blues.
Thank you so much for having me, Nathan. I'd love to be back. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year.